Good evening, and thank you for joining us for our second presentation in our Hope and Healing in Grief series. We're very excited to have Ann Vogt here with us this evening to talk about a very, again, tough topic, but that's why we're having this series in partnership with Community Education, because we really want the community to have the opportunity to engage with these topics, to discuss them, and to recognize how common they are and how we can support each other as well. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to Ann so that she can share all the awesome things she has to say.
Awesome, thank you. 1 in 4 women today suffer from a miscarriage of a known pregnancy. The stats are even different when you look at pregnancy in general. It's about 50% of pregnancies women miscarry. So that means that before they even know that they exist, they are miscarrying. Our journey with miscarriage started very unexpectedly, right? Nobody plans to have a miscarriage or even have to worry about what that is and what that means for you. My husband and I got married in July of 2010. We knew we wanted a family. My husband is 5 years older than me, and we knew we wanted to be parents. One thing that I'm gonna stress tonight that I think helps people understand what miscarriage is all about is that when you work to build a family, there's a desire to be a mom. There's a desire for motherhood and parenthood, and you get this expectation that that's going to happen. Never in my childhood, in my growing up years, in my health classes, in college, ever did anybody talk to me about the chances of a miscarriage. And knowing that they are 25% seems like a topic we should be talking about. So I really appreciate Leroy saying, we got to talk about it to know it happens. But also to know what we can do when it happens to someone we love. Like I said, Brian and I wanted to start a family, and friends of mine were also starting families at the exact same time. So just know that becomes a very sensitive time frame. Of course, everybody jokes with newlyweds, when are you gonna start a family? When are you gonna start a family? And in our minds, we were just so excited to be parents and to have that moment where you take that pregnancy test and it comes back positive and you're like, this is it, this is the moment I've been waiting for. I get to be a mom. And I do want to stress to anyone in the room who knows anyone who has suffered a miscarriage, they are a mom. They did become a mom. And it is a piece of their identity. They didn't get to hold that baby necessarily, but they definitely were a parent to that. And having that knowledge and helping them understand that, I think is just really important when you're speaking to someone who has suffered grief in that way and that loss. In February of 2011 is when we got the news we were going to be parents. Young people today are told right away to go get that checked with the doctor. You go in and you get either a blood test or a confirmed pregnancy test. And I got a phone call from my doctor pretty quickly after taking that blood test, and he said, numbers are a little low, so that doesn't mean anything, but it could be a signal that you have miscarried. So what we're gonna do is just another blood test in a couple days, no big deal. So I took that second blood test, and I was nervous, but also still excited and on that high of being a mom and having that news. That when he called me, he actually called me, I was a teacher, and in 2011 I was actively teaching, and I told my students I'm waiting for an important phone call, mistake number 1. And when that important phone call came in, I stepped out into the hallway, took the call, and he said, well, I just wanted to let you know that your numbers went down, which tells us that you've suffered a miscarriage. But the likelihood of this happening with your first pregnancy is really high. So no big deal. You can go ahead and start trying soon, and let me know if you need anything. Have a great day. Have a great day. I just remember, nothing against this man. He makes these phone calls all the time. As someone who works with women and fertility and all that, he makes these phone calls all the time. To me, that was a phone call I never wanted to receive. I was not ready for. I would mentally, physically, all the things was not ready for that moment to hear, your dreams have been crushed, but have a good day. So after that, I was shook up. I didn't tell anyone other than a few close friends that we had even gotten a positive pregnancy test. So it almost became this shameful secret after that, because I had to keep it hidden, but I was struggling with all these emotions, struggling with, will I ever get pregnant? Is this gonna happen again? He didn't seem too worried. I'm really worried. My husband didn't really have a lot to say about it. My husband and I are polar opposites. I'm outgoing and loud and want to talk through all my feelings, and he is introverted, quiet, and keeps all of his feelings inside. And we handled our grief very, very differently. I wanted to know everything I could do to make sure this never happened again, and I went into research mode and all that. And lo and behold, we got pregnant a couple months later, and I was just hoping that that first one was, just an accident. Just, hey, he sounded like this happens to a lot of first-time moms, and it'll be okay. So we had news that we were pregnant. We went in, got the test. Hey, tests look great. Went into the doctor. He said, you know what, because you had the one miscarriage, let's do an ultrasound. Let's make sure everything's good. We did that. Good news. Everything was great. 8 weeks came along, and we were like, oh, ask the doctor, do you think we can tell people? He says, let's do another check at 10 weeks. Hey, all is good. Awesome. We start telling everyone. Luckily for me, I will be selfish that this was June now. So I'm no longer teaching. I'm no longer standing in front of students all day. I'm, just kind of able to be excited and share my news, but not have to worry about everyone finding out. Well, we ended up telling our parents, and they were ecstatic, and we did then kind of share about what happened back in February. We told our friends, we started the nursery, we painted the bedroom, we moved out everything that was in there to make a home for this baby. We were so excited, and on June 21st, we went in for the official ultrasound with an ultrasound tech, and instantly, you just knew something was wrong. That ultrasound tech, bless her heart, she was so young and innocent. I felt so bad afterwards. I don't know if this was one of her first or not. She did not share. She cannot give that information. So after a few minutes, she said, I'm going to need to excuse myself. I'll be back. And I instantly knew what was going on. My husband had no idea. He's like, what? Why are you crying? What is wrong? What are you so upset about? And I said, there's no heartbeat. This is not good. Lo and behold, the next person who walks in the door is our doctor. He was so kind and so helpful. And, he really did make a lot of comments about, hey, this is a moment in your life. We're going to work on this together. This does not define your journey as a mom. This is just a moment in time. At the time, I didn't want to hear that. I remember leaving and just being so upset. Nobody could have said anything that was going to make that better. That's going to be my first advice tonight. If you're looking for the right words when talking to someone who's experienced loss, there are no right words. There are no words that are going to instantly set that person at ease. There are no words that are going to take away their hurt and their pain. And that's okay. You don't need to give words. A lot of times just being in their presence is what they needed. Following that miscarriage, now we had a journey, because now it wasn't just a one-time thing. Now this is a continual situation that we had to take care of. Lucky for us, I will say lucky. At the time, it felt really unlucky, but lucky for us, we found out instantly that my body just doesn't produce enough progesterone. So once we took care of that, we were able to conceive 2 beautiful human beings, and that was a miracle. But I want to walk through the summer after our situation. A couple things happened, and a couple pieces that I want to share with all of you are, I had a friend, and again, because it was summer, I didn't have to work, I didn't have to go anywhere. I could have literally just shelled up in my house and kept myself away from the world, but I had a best friend who came over and said, what are we doing today? What are we doing today? Are we staying in? Are we gonna make popcorn and watch movies? Are we gonna go for a walk? What are we doing today? And she did that every single day for 2 months. That is something I'd love to share just with the world. Having someone say, we don't need to talk, you don't need to get over this. That was, I think, a belief of my husband. My husband kept saying, you gotta just let it go. You gotta just let it go. It's okay, you just gotta let it go. And I was like, let it go? It's our baby. We can't let this go. Where my friend didn't say any of that. She just said, what are we doing today? So another piece of information is wait until people are ready to talk. That would be another tip of mine. Wait until people are ready to talk. Sometimes I was a talker. I wanted to talk right away, and I wanted to talk my husband's ear off. I wanted to tell him what I was feeling, what I was thinking, how mad I was, what I was wishing, and what I wanted to do about it, and he didn't want to talk at all. We handled our grief very differently, and I would say that is another piece of advice. My husband, again, who's very quiet and introverted, acted like this was not a big deal. We got done with the ultrasound and we spoke with our doctor. We drove home. We took the whole day off, the rest of the day off, and my husband took a nap. And I don't mean to belittle him on this. I was in shock. I literally was just watching him on the couch sleep. And I thought, how can you sleep? I can't stop crying. I was so upset. And for months, I really thought my husband did not care about this situation. Well, 9 months later, we actually announced we were pregnant, and so did my sister-in-law and brother-in-law at the same time. Our babies were due 7 days apart, which at the time, in the beginning, oh, this is the best news ever. We're gonna have cousins born. They're gonna be the same age. That was very difficult. And I will say, my sister-in-law came out later to say, gosh, Ann, I didn't know how to talk to you. I didn't know what to say. I was having a baby. I was happy, and my pregnancy was thriving, and I didn't want to say a word around you. And I remember wanting to kind of live vicariously through her, asking her so many questions. What's it feel like? And are you excited? And she would give one-word answers. And she would not want to share. And later, she came out, I just didn't want to hurt your feelings. And here I was just wanting to take the spotlight off of me and my loss and help her celebrate, because I didn't want to take away from that. When her daughter was born, I was excited. I was excited to go see this baby. I kind of was thinking in my head, we're going to be able to follow this baby's journey. It's not our own, but when this baby is a year old, ours would have been a year old. And when this baby walks for the first time, maybe ours would be walking for the first time. And so I kind of had this attachment towards our niece. And Brian, so talk about grief happening at different stages. The moment we got the phone call that my sister-in-law was pregnant, I said, oh, we got to go to Iowa. It was a Saturday. We were going to have time to get down there. And I'm packing and I'm getting ready. And Brian looked me dead in the eye and he said, we are not going to see that baby. We are not going to walk into that room and hold that baby. I want nothing to do with this. And I thought, at first I was shocked, and then I went, thank you, finally. I didn't know if our loss was affecting you. You never said anything, but this reaction tells me this has been on your heart and that you were processing grief just differently than I was. We ended up not going down there that weekend, but she was baptized a couple weeks later, and we were there to celebrate her then. And I think my husband needed to get over. Our due date was 7 days later. So our due date was the next week. I think he needed to get past that in order to accept what had happened. But that was interesting. I was processing grief instantly. I mean, literally upon seeing no heartbeat, I was processing my thoughts and my feelings and all of that. And for him, it just happened a lot later. And he didn't even realize it was happening until what could have been was kind of in front of him. So allow people to grieve at different rates. Men, women, young, old are going to just grieve at a different rate, and so being there for them. A couple of questions I wrote down that you could ask, questions that I think are helpful to ask, are just simply, how are you feeling? How are you feeling? And I only had one word, which is not appropriate for television. When people said, how are you feeling? I felt awful. And I would say that, I just feel awful. There's nothing I can do. There's nothing that's gonna change this. I just feel awful. And then luckily I had that best friend say, that's okay. Maybe tomorrow you'll feel a little better. Maybe tomorrow, but it's okay. We can feel awful today. So really allowing them to talk when they're ready and answer that question. Also, just, do you want to talk? I wanted to talk about it. That summer in August, I went back to school, and teachers, right, when we go back to school, we slowly go back. So we step into the classroom and maybe we clean up an area, or we put up posters, and we're constantly walking around the halls, and you see somebody's door open, you're like, oh, a friend. And you go in and you talk, and I wanted to talk about what happened. I wanted to verbally process it. And so having people say, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, do you want to talk about it? I did want to talk. Now, some people might have said, no, I don't want to talk about it. What was interesting about miscarriage and child loss is because we don't talk about it, we think no one's experiencing it, right? It's just kind of a quiet loss that we think, oh, this must not be happening to anyone else. And I remember going to the guidance counselor to talk to her just as a friend and share my news. And she said, oh, I suffered 2 miscarriages. And I was like, what? When? Oh, when did this happen? And she shared when it happened and how it happened and kind of her emotions. And I was like, oh, I'm so sorry that happened to you. And, again, it was like now we have this shared connection. Other people would share, oh, my sister just lost a baby. Oh, my niece was pregnant. And I was thinking to myself, why are we not talking about this? Sounds like a lot of women are going through this struggle and we're just ignoring it. And so really bringing that to light when people want to talk about it, give them that opportunity. Another thought was just, how can I help? I don't know if I would have had an answer to that, but with my friend coming over, she wasn't saying, how can I help? Her response was, what are we doing today? That was her way of saying, hey, how can I help? Can I go get treats? Can I take you out to lunch? Can we go for a walk? But that was her way of saying, how can I help? How can I help you process? How can I be here for you? That's another great question. And again, be ready for no response. I don't know how you can help me. It feels like it's just happening to us. And I'll go on that statement. It feels like it's just happening to us. However, someone who took my miscarriage maybe harder than me was my mom. My mom had no problems getting pregnant. She had 4 children, 4 beautiful children. Her mom had 12 children. And really this miscarriage was not a conversation and not a situation she had ever run into. So after this happened, she kept saying, I'm so sorry. This is my fault. And I was like, what? How is my miscarriage your fault? And she was like, well, clearly I did something wrong. Genetically, something is wrong that you can't carry a baby. And that is kind of true. My body does not produce progesterone like a normal body, but that wasn't her fault. But she took it that it was. We were very worried for a good period of time that I was never going to be able to be a mom. And she knew that was a dream of mine and that was an identity I wanted. And for her to feel like this was her fault was very difficult for me and her, that I did not think was going to be a situation. So also think about other people that are affected by miscarriage. A lot of times we see the parents who are hurting, but the parents of those parents are hurting also. One of the things I'd love to make sure to share while I'm here is the Angel Baby Memorial that is in the New Ulm Cemetery. And I'll give you a little story on this, but I'll let you know the #1 people who call and who buy pavers to be engraved are the grandparents of the baby. And that's been really interesting to me. It's not the parents, it's not the moms who are calling to get a paver engraved. It's grandma saying, oh, this was a baby, this was my grandchild, and I want it remembered, and I want my child to know there's a place for them. Let me tell you a little bit about the baby memorial. through the city of New Ulm. In New Ulm, there was a group of women called Mamas on a Mission. And there were women who have either miscarried, have stillborn children, or had lost children after they were grown. And these women were getting together to talk about their grief, to support one another, to just allow a space for them to share. And it came out, man, I wish there was a place we could go. I wish there was a spot. I don't know, our child passed at 11 weeks. Well, there's nothing there. There's nothing there to bury. There's nothing there to put in a cemetery. But that doesn't mean there isn't this giant hole in our hearts that we would like to think about and grieve. And so this conversation of, wow, what if there was a spot that people who have suffered loss, child loss, could go? Is that something we would want? And the women of Mamas on a Mission said, oh, that sounds perfect. They had spoken to someone at the New Ulm Cemetery, and the man that does a lot of their grounds work said, oh, I'm actually a father who lost children. I want to say it was like 50 some years ago. And he said, I still think about, I think they were twins, I still think about who they would be as people. So that's another little piece, is it doesn't go away. You're constantly thinking, our child would be 11 and a half right now, and they'd be in 6th grade, and they'd be in middle school, and these are all these things they would be doing, and you think about that, and you think about who they were, who they could have become. But so with that, he said, I know the exact space. I know just where we would put this. There's a beautiful shade under these trees that I think would be great for an open space. So the Mamas on a Mission started raising money and creating this memorial space at the New Ulm Cemetery. Have any of you been or seen it? Oh, isn't it just special? It is just special. Dina Iverson is kind of the one who headed that up. She lost a baby, Cassie Iverson, who had passed away, and Cassie has her own headstone, but Dina said, I want to do this for other women who are feeling this loss. So at the end of 2019, they got creating this idea of this space, and going into 2020, I joined in mid-2020 and said, how can I help? I know that feeling, and I also just know, since having these 2 miscarriages, I can count on both hands how many friends of mine have lost babies and lost or have had infertility struggles as well. And so I was right in there with them. I do want to say their names. So Lynn Fink, Tricia Homan, Paige Hawkins, Rachel Lang, Samantha Domeyer, Dina Iverson, and myself really headed up this space. New Ulm Monument was fantastic in connecting us to the headstone. It's a mother holding a baby, and there's paver spaces in front of that. And like I said, the whole goal was to create a location where people could go and sit and just be in their grief, whether that is heavy grief or simply just grief of missing that moment, missing, seeing that baby's face and all of that. We also wanted to make it a space where moms and dads could go. In making this, we were talking about women. And as much as the women are struggling, I think there's another, again, quiet side, a quiet story happening with the men that are going through loss as well. It's just very different. They weren't carrying the child. I remember Brian saying to me, I get why you're so upset, but I just don't feel as connected. And of course you don't, it was my body, but yet that doesn't mean he didn't have aspirations and expectations of what that was going to be like to be a father. So giving a space where even, men and women could go sit, whether it be as families or just separately. I drive by there often, and there are people who are just by themselves, enjoying the peace and the quiet, and maybe doing a little prayer while they're there. At that space, we do have pavers available to be purchased, and that can be engraved with 3 lines of text. So we have lots of people who just maybe put a last name or give a nickname. Some people have obviously named their children, and so they have their full name on there and either their date of birth or their date of death. But it's just a really nice space for that memory stone. Those are $100. I have paver forms here today, or you can reach out on Facebook. We have a site called the Angel Baby Memorial. So if you know of someone who would like to have a paver engraved, let us know. Sadly, we've had people come back and say, we need another one. It's happened again. And as sad and heartbreaking as that is, it's again such a nice thing that they can physically do that gives them a little bit of that closure. In wrapping up, I wanted to make sure to touch on, with miscarriage and child loss, one thing that we don't get to talk about is what those children are doing, right? I've heard people say, oh, how many kids do you have? And when I'm around women who've suffered loss, they'll say, oh, I have two. I have two who are here. And when you hear phrases like that, ask questions. Say, oh, have you lost one? Do you want to tell me about that? Some of us are still really struggling with our grief and talking through that even now, 12 years later. It still feels good to know that they existed and they're a piece of us and they're a piece of the world. And so really making sure to acknowledge that it happened. I think again, when it happened to me and all these women were saying it had happened to them, I thought, we're not even acknowledging that happened. Why aren't we talking about this more? And so really opening up that communication and allowing people to speak through that. On that note, I will take questions. I think I'll stop there for a moment. Is there anything? I see a smile in the back.
So for your husband, after that point when your niece was born, did he start talking more about it after that point, or was he still pretty quiet?
That's a great question. We actually got pregnant that January. And I think that is what allowed him to grieve. Was now we weren't grieving something that will never be. We were grieving something that had happened, but we had hope kind of for the future. So yes, our daughter was born in 2012. And again, through doctoring and just understanding what my body needed, we were able to carry, she came early, but we should have been able to carry full term. She was ready to go at 36 weeks, and we were just ready for that miracle. But I think that is what allowed him to finally open up, is that it wasn't definite anymore, where before it felt like we're never going to be parents, so I'm just not going to talk about it because I don't want to think about it. Where knowing then that whole pregnancy was, whoo, that was different than a lot of first pregnancies I can imagine from other moms, because every week I was worried and anxious, and he was kind of like, how are you feeling? He doesn't check on me often, but without that first pregnancy was, how are you doing today? How are you feeling today? Are you sick today? Do you feel icky today? Good. We did. We celebrated my morning sickness like nobody's business. It's probably the best thing in a sense of it really made motherhood and pregnancy wonderful, because it was something we thought we weren't ever going to get. And then when we did get it, it was like, yes, I'm sick every day at 10 a.m. This is the best. When morning sickness went away, I remember I went straight to the clinic the next day. I said, oh my gosh, tell me we're okay. And he's like, oh, it's fine. I was like, it's not fine. But no, so once that happened, he really was able to kind of process that and work through it with me. Where before, there was no talk of it. I would say, how are you? He'd be, I'm fine. We're fine. It's fine. When it obviously was not fine. But, yeah.
I thought it was kind of tough to keep your head straight, because we'd be so hypersensitive, that this is going to happen again. This is no, just stay in. Just that radical thinking or acceptance, just only right here.
One day at a time.
Yeah, or
Yeah.
if one day is too long, get me till noon.
Yep, get me
So that I
till
can
noon.
eat lunch, then get me till 4.
Yes,
And then 8 o'clock, so I can put my pajamas on.
yeah.
Just that fear would be so engulfing.
So I hear that and I understand that. And for me, I was a teacher, which was a blessing in disguise because there was no time to think about me during the school day. So I was able to stay busy, but the anxiety hit at 9 p.m. to 1 a.m. It was like every possible thing that could happen to me was going to happen the next day. And exactly what you're saying, what if, or why didn't I feel that, or why isn't the baby moving? Oh my God, something's wrong. And you become engulfed in that worry that this is happening again. The good thing for us is with the progesterone injections, I had to get blood tested every week. So at least there was kind of a meter to say, hey, you're right on track, this is going well. As much as those blood draws were not fun, they were so good for me to just stay, like you said, one day at a time or 1 hour, but also 1 week at a time. Hey, let's just get to Thursday, and then we're gonna know our numbers, and that's gonna set me at ease. And so that was kind of nice. We actually, what induced Ella coming early is we stopped my progesterone injections the first week of July, and she came 3 weeks later. And we were like 4 weeks later. We were like, oh, okay, next time we need to continue those a little bit longer. That was helpful. But yeah. But no, the fog, going back to your comment about keeping things straight, that summer after we lost that second baby, I don't know if I could tell you anything I did, like remembering. It was so foggy. And so, yes, we were going for walks with my friend Jamie, and we ended up making a quilt that summer. She taught me how to quilt. So I do remember that, but I remember literally quilting and just like soaking the fabric with tears. And I was just so upset. And she'd say, oh, what happened? And I'd be like, you know what happened? And it would just be this explosion all of a sudden. That was another note that I put on the handout is be prepared for really unexpected emotions. I remember it was Halloween the year after that, or the Halloween after that miscarriage, and a friend of mine was complaining about her baby keeping her up all night. And talk about unexpected emotions and probably some unexpected words that came out of my mouth. We were in a staff lounge, and she was, oh, I'm exhausted, and this baby won't sleep, and I'm never gonna get any. And I remember just standing up and saying, be grateful for what you have. And I walked out, and I remember just sobbing, and she felt terrible. But also, that's another piece is, you don't need to walk on eggshells, but be prepared for unexpected emotions. I couldn't expect her to keep that to herself, or don't talk about your baby around me. I never said that. I wanted to know, but there was definitely a heartbreak in there of, I'll come over and snuggle your baby all night long. That's all I want. But I remember those unexpected emotional breaks. That was afterwards. I was like, I shouldn't have said that. And she's like, no, I shouldn't have said these. And I'm like, no, you can experience what you're experiencing, and that's okay. Just know this is like so hard for me. I will say that was one thing that I've kind of processed is everything in my life up until that moment, I was able to do myself. I was able to get what I wanted through my own actions. And then these miscarriages came, and I couldn't physically do anything. It was not something I could work harder at, or just do these 5 things and then you'll miraculously have this baby, before we knew about the progesterone. So that was really hard for me. I knew I wanted to be a teacher at age 5, and I became a teacher. I knew I wanted to meet someone, and I met my husband. I knew I wanted to get married someday, and I got married. Things within my teaching career I wanted to do, I was able to do because I could control my own actions. And when we miscarried, I just remember feeling so out of control. But what am I supposed to do? Just tell me what to do. And there was really, in the beginning, nothing that I could do, and that was really hard. The other thing I wrote down in my notes was I felt so broken as a woman we talk about it a lot as kids, right? You play house and you're a mom in the game of house, and you grow up thinking about what I'm going to name my kids and what my wedding's going to be like, and you have all these, beliefs or thoughts, and then your body doesn't work the way it's supposed to, and it's just like, oh my gosh, I'm broken. Something's wrong with me. And that was something I was not prepared for either. And so really getting through that of, hey, let's figure it out and let's see what we can do about it was really helpful for me. Yeah. Other thoughts or questions?
Have you talked to anyone who's experienced a miscarriage or stillbirth when they already had other children, and what those children went through in dealing with that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we'll talk about my sister-in-law, Jacqueline, who had a baby when we had miscarried. The following year, Jacqueline miscarried. And it was so interesting because she called me and she just said, I'm so sorry. I did not know how much this hurt. And I had said, I didn't even know how much it was going to hurt, though, because I wasn't a mom yet, where you know what this baby feels like and smells like, and you can hold this baby, and now you know what you're missing out on. And that was kind of a positive to having them early, is I didn't know what, I was upset and I was sad for what could be, but I didn't even know what that was going to look like. And then, having a miscarriage after birth, or after having other babies, I can imagine that is extremely difficult. To answer your question about siblings, there is a woman, Lynn, who's in our group. She had a child, and then years later had a second child who died under a year old. And she just talked about a lot of trauma that the oldest suffered of, well, where is he? But where did he go? But when is he coming back? And that idea of losing a physical person and how difficult that was for the sibling. And suggestions for that is just counseling at any age is good. Talking through grief with anything, whether it be a loss of a sibling or a parent or whatnot, giving them that opportunity to talk through what they're experiencing. But that's kind of our main one. The other women who have suffered miscarriages, their children have all been really, really young. And so now we talk about it. Our kids know. Our kids know that we have a paver at the memorial because we had miscarriages, and those were babies will meet in heaven and things like that. But yeah, it's a great question. I'll ask more about that with others when I meet them, because I can imagine that's a big struggle, especially when you see your mom changing and she's having a baby and that's exciting, and then all of a sudden there's nothing there. I'm sure that's puzzling for kids and siblings. Yeah.
It's been 19 years at our house, but we even still talk about it today with my daughter, who would have been the oldest sibling, just today.
Yeah.
It's like, can you believe, she's, yeah.
Yep.
It never goes away, it just gets different.
Yeah, yeah. And it's good to talk about, because they were a person to us. Yeah.
They still are, it's just different.
It's just different, yeah. We had a woman who bought a paver for her child who passed away in like 1950 something. And we thought, oh my goodness. Again, talk about this idea that we don't talk about it and we don't let it be known to a lot of people. And for this woman to say, I'd really like to celebrate my child 50 years, so 70 years later. It's a big deal. So, yeah. And it does stay with you. And all grief, right, stays with us, but it just changes. And I think the big thing is just not being afraid to talk to people about grief or talk to people about death, because we're all processing it at different rates and different speeds and different situations. Absolutely. Thank you so much. Awesome. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Yep.
Really appreciate you coming and sharing those with us. So thank you so much for being here, for those of you who came to see it live, and for those of you who watched the video. We hope that you'll take advantage of the resources. When we have, once the video is up, we'll also have a link to the Mamas on a Mission and things like that as well. Our third presentation, which we'll do next month, is going to deal with loss by suicide. We really hope that people take advantage of these series, and again, we're grateful for partnering with community education to get this series going, and so thanks for joining us tonight.